Good afternoon. I would like to call this Wednesday devotion not another lecture about white racism. See, I've been thinking for the last week, as many of us have been thinking and stewing with current events and forming something in my head. And I have lots of thoughts I'd like to share, some of which I shared on Sunday in my sermon, and you can go back and look at that if you want. But as I was working on this, I had a conversation with a very dear church member. This is a white woman, an older woman in our congregation, and we've been through some stuff. We don't see eye to eye on some things, but we really care about each other because we've been together for a while. And I called her yesterday, and she wasn't having a good day, so I called her back today. And we encouraged each other. We talked about what was going on. She shared what she was going through. She asked about me. And then the conversation kind of came to an end, but there was a pause. And she had something, clearly she wanted to ask me. And she said, could she share something with me? And it was that kind of like, take a deep breath. Like, okay, somebody wants to share something. We all have moments where we know something's coming and we should just center ourselves and get ready to hear what somebody has to say. And she said that, I'm going to put words in her mouth, I'm not going to get it quite right, but she said, I hope you don't talk very often about that stuff you talked about in your sermon Sunday. I just want us to be kind to each other and love each other and have peace. I don't know why people keep stirring up the pot. So I heard her, I listened to her, and I listened a little bit more to what she was saying, and she shared some of her experiences, some of her friendships, some things she's going through, and all that was real. All that, is about her and clearly her experience. And I shared some of my thinking and why, we disagreed on some things. And we went back and forth, but in the end we left on a good note because, we care about each other and we have that kind of bond. After that, I came downstairs and outside we had this big windstorm. I don't know if you can see the leaves and the branches down in our yard. Thank you, Jonah. But we had a big windstorm and now the sun's out. And so Amy was sitting on the back patio in the sun, and I asked her how she's doing. She says, I cannot look at Facebook or the news one more time today. There's too much. And I just realized that we're all going through so much. We were going through a season in our country where things felt really divided. The election and politics felt really hard, even before we had the coronavirus. And now things feel especially hard, and we're not sure how to understand what's going on and how to deal. And this morning, a member of the congregation died, and we're all mourning really one of the great ones in our congregation, Bill Friedgen, and missing him. We're all dealing with so much, and sometimes it feels like racism is just one more thing on top of everything else. For white people, racism is like the one thing that sometimes we feel like we can't deal with that right now. But I think that's kind of key to what is happening now is people of color are telling us that they can't ever take a break from racism, that they can't ever decide that they don't want to deal with racism today. On top of everything else that everybody's going through, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, that people of color are dealing with a system that is stacked against them every day. And the attitudes of white people, whether they're intentional or whether they're unknown and unexamined and unintentional, attitudes of racism, and sometimes words and actions, intentional or unintentional, that people of color are always dealing with this extra layer of things. Now that might be really hard to hear, and a lot of us don't want to believe that's true. Some of us know it's true in our heads. but it's hard to hold in our hearts and hard to hold in the center of our understanding for very long. We have to remind ourselves. But some of us just don't want to believe it. Don't want to believe it could be true. And I guess my invitation is, if you're in that second category, that you really can't believe that racism is that hard and it's that ever present for people, I want to invite you to listen, because I think this is what the moment this week in our news cycle and in the reality of what's going on all around us is about, is the pain of people who have been dealing with racism on top of everything else for far too long and can't take it anymore and are expressing themselves in so many ways. And I guess I just invite us to listen. There are so many social media posts and so many entertainers and people we watch and know from the media, and people that we care about, friends on our Facebook pages and in our lives, who are giving testimony right now. If we look around, there's so much testimony of people, of the pain that people feel, not just from seeing George Floyd murdered in a video and people get away with it, but the pain of everyday experiences of racism. And what if those testimonies are all true? What if people really are dealing with that extra layer? What if, on top of everything else, black people have to experience white racism every day? So there's a Bible passage that came to my mind. It's an often quoted Bible passage that I think we could all just sit with as we try to, give each other a break, because we're dealing with a lot, and be easy with each other, but also try to step up and listen to each other. And it says, O mortal, what God wants from you, what the Lord wants from you, to do justice and to love kindness and walk humbly with your God. And that's what we all need right now, is to do justice, to do fairness by each other, but also to love kindness, to be kind to each other, and to have some humility, to walk humbly with each other and God. And that's what I hope for all of us today. Thank you.